Man, I'm in a different place here. Where did that come from? Anyway, good morning, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with the Sports on a Positive Tip podcast, Thanksgiving edition, day before Thanksgiving. Kenny, how is everything over there in Cleveland?
Well, everything's pretty good. Sports-wise, it's still kind of weird. I don't know if you heard this. So officially on last Friday, the Indians became the Guardians.
Yes.
They put up the sign for the team store, and the same day the sign fell down. So
I didn't know about that.
That wasn't a good sign. Yeah.
That wasn't a good sign. That's a good pun. I got you.
Yeah. But they have changed everything else over.
Yeah, that's fine.
On the front part of Progressive Field, they have
okay.
They have they've changed that to Guardians, and all the merch is out. They've changed websites, social media, so they're full flown now the Guardians. So
okay, all right, good stuff there. Bob and I were really laughing about that. Neither one of us had any idea that there was still roller derby around. So hopefully the roller derby team, got a nice little chunk of change from the now the Cleveland Guardian baseball team. Let's start with the NFL. It's really gotten it's really gotten what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of parity, right? I could not tell you who the real top teams are, because every time we think we know the top teams, like the Packers, they lose. The Chiefs, we were down on them for the first part of the year. Now they seem to have gotten their act together. Cowboys looked like they were real good, but they looked really bad against the Chiefs. It's really, really interesting. But I want to start with the Monday night debacle. And I thought Tampa Bay was there right for the taking there, because they're another one that I'm not too sure about, even though, you've got the X factor with Mr. Brady, but they're another team I'm not too sure about. I thought the Giants had their opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and they just couldn't capitalize. Their offense just couldn't get moving. And thus then Jason Garrett gets fired right here in the middle of the season. Freddie Kitchens, your boy from Cleveland, is now the offensive coordinator. I was just feeling the anger from you as that game was kind of unfolding, because I know you had kind of held off after they played well the last week or two. So, Mr. Giants fan, loyal Giant fan, since you were a little guy, what are you thinking? What are you feeling?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't listen to it or watch a ton of the game, but I was watching the Peyton and Eli broadcast. And kind of something that stuck out to me was towards the end, when they got the ball back right before halftime, how they were saying, why are they doing this? Both of them were just absolutely puzzled. And Jason Garrett, while obviously he had a very up and down tenure with the Cowboys, was always a pretty decent play caller. But I don't know what happened. Finally, you get Saquon Barkley back. You're kind of getting a lot of the pieces that have been missing most of the year. This should have been, especially like you said, this team was not really playing their best. The Giants had a lot of opportunities and then just really couldn't capitalize on them. And seeing some of the interview stuff from Joe Judge the night, Tuesday morning, it did sound like Jason Garrett wasn't going to be at least the offensive coordinator next year. I didn't realize he was talking more next week. But it is interesting. Apparently, also, there's rumors floating around that Dave Gettleman is also on the very, very hot seat, which could mean that they just absolutely clean house, fire everyone, start over. I don't know if you know this.
Do you think they'll do that?
I don't know, because the Giants don't usually do that. They usually have a bit of a longer leash. I do think Gettleman is gone after this year. Maybe Judge, because a lot of times GMs like to hire, especially in football, their own head coach. But I don't know if you know this, but since 2017, the Giants have the worst record in football. Like worse
Yeah.
than the Jaguars, worse than the Texans, worse than everybody,
And the Jets, yeah.
than the Jets.
Yeah.
So I think it's time to the Giants need to do something drastic. And for like the second time in a month, they really haven't come to play on the big stage. Like they're playing Monday Night Football and not looking like a team that should be playing on Monday Night Football.
The offensive line was talked about a lot. I think was it your left tackle or your left guard was injured, and has that been a factor? Or I can't. What we touched on this last week. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts on this. It's really hard to gauge where Daniel Jones is at, right? And is he not getting the protection? I thought the Giants made some pretty good moves to finally shore up that offensive line, which I thought was a big deal. But Jones just seems skittish, back there. That was the one play I think you're talking about towards the end of the half where they were like, what are they doing? Where he just, he just tossed the ball. It looked like, the receiver was nowhere near, and he threw it across his body. And I think that was an interception. And they scored before the half, Tampa Bay did. But what's the root here? How do you judge, no pun intended, right, with Joe Judge, but how do you gauge, I'll say that, how do you gauge Daniel Jones? Is he the guy to lead this team over the next 7-8 years? It's so hard to gauge it because you just can't tell if it's coaching, if it's the players around them. And I think the Giants have some weapons. It's weird how they're not using them. I think they have a better, although one of the Jet wide receivers is really stepping up, Elijah Moore. But I think overall the Giants have a better core of receivers, and Barkley. I'm not sure what's wrong with Barkley. I think he's just still not healthy. But how do you gauge this, Kenny? It's not a question just for the Giants. There's so many other teams. We were talking about Baker Mayfield last week. There's so many other teams that are going to be going through this. I'm anxious to hear your thoughts. Even if you fire Gettleman now, what do you do? Is this your quarterback going forward?
Yeah, and I mentioned this with Baker last week, who he had another horrible game, and he's starting to turn on the media. I think with Daniel Jones, it's really hard to gauge him because, like you said, it doesn't seem like there are times where he looks really good. But then there's also times where you wonder, well, is it the play calling? Is it like the offensive line? Is it not having like a consistent, healthy receiving core? Truth be told, I don't know. But I do think you can rule out play calling now that the legend, the man, the myth, the legend, Freddie Kitchens is going to be calling the offensive plays now. So I think at least you can kind of get a little bit of that out. Truth be told, I think he can be like a decent franchise quarterback, but like I don't know if he'll ever reach the level of, say, like I think he could probably win a playoff game, but he's not gonna. I don't know if this guy can take you to the Super Bowl. I don't know if he has like that Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning type of ilk to him. Eli Manning too. Like he doesn't really do that well in crunch time. A lot of times when they rely on him too much, he turns the ball over a ton. So I don't know. But I think next year you got to give him at least one more year.
I agree with everything you said. I hate when teams change so much. I've been saying this for a while. Sometimes it's just necessary. It's really a bad fit with the coach or whatever. But it's hard. It's when you get to that moment of truth, it's really hard. I just think I don't think it's ever the answer to change GMs, to change coaches, year in and year out, every 2 years. Again, I like to look at, and this is where I'm really disappointed. I think the Giant fan base Well, see, you're not an old guard Giant fan base. You're kind of a first generation Giant fan because I wasn't a Giant fan. But you know this: the core of the Giant fans are generational. Tickets passed down year to year. Their stadium is always sold out, and it's all mostly season ticket holders. It's almost impossible to go to a Giant game if you're not a season ticket holder. But it is generation to generation, and they generally are really, really patient. But their patience has really run out. You're a little bit different because you're a little younger and you're first generation, right? But here's the point. The Giants used to be that model franchise from kind of the old guard. And I'm going to compare them with the Bears because the Bears have also fallen off as well in terms of they were kind of that older model franchise. So were the Raiders. Because the Raiders weren't NFL. They were more of the AFL and then AFC. But there's certain teams, and the two teams that come to mind are the Steelers and the Packers. Again, ownership, for the Steelers and the Giants hasn't changed in generations, right? The Packers a little bit different because they went public. They did a couple of different things so that they could upgrade Lambeau Field several years ago. So a little different, but they still operate as more of a traditional franchise. They really don't change coaches, very often. Mike McCarthy was there for a long time. And the Steelers, I think we mentioned this, it's probably 50 years now, 50 some odd years since the early 70s. They've only had 3 coaches, and that is
wild.
That is amazing. Now they haven't been to the Super Bowl every year, and they're a little bit disappointing as well. They were disappointing a couple of years ago. I know they made the playoffs last year, but there's just consistency. They've got stuff built in, right? And the Giants were like that for a long time, but it's like they've kind of really fallen off, and it's almost like that structure that they worked so hard to build over the years is just not there anymore. And so my question to you is, and you don't have to answer this, you've kind of already answered this, but we can jump in a little bit more next week. But where do they go from here? How do they get that back? Again, they're an older, more traditional franchise, yet now they're finding themselves changing coaches pretty often. And I don't know. I don't think it's the coach this time around. I think it's the infrastructure, just like we talked about with the Mets. I think Luis Rojas actually could probably be a good manager somewhere. I think he's going to be a good third base coach. But you see it with the Mets where you see players just jump and ship, and someone like Steven Matt, we'll get to baseball in a second, in a few. We'll continue on the NFL. But someone like Steven Matz, who is a Long Island guy, would want to come back to New York, thumbed his nose up at pretty much the same money the Mets, according to what I read, that the Mets offered him, and he signed with the Cardinals. Another kind of, so you compare the Cardinals to another kind of model franchise. We were shocked when they fired their manager at the end of this year because that's just not how they do or how they operate, right? But yet, the Cardinals spend money when they need to spend money. And they're bringing in a guy like Steven Matz, who last year got it figured out, 14-7, 3.8 something ERA, stayed healthy all year. Of course, the Mets wanted him back. You would have thought he would have, got on the next plane to come back. But it's the same with Noah Syndergaard and Aaron Loop. That they're in a flux right now, and the infrastructure is not there. Anyway, I said a lot. What's your final thoughts on the Giants?
Yeah, I think you need to I think they have to think long and hard if they fire Joe Judge, who they're replacing him with. Because, we talked about this with the Mets. You don't want just some rando, manager in there that isn't going to make that big of a difference. I think Joe Judge can be that guy because he seems kind of more of the old school type. But then hire a GM that is going to do good things. The Giants right now are looking, let's see, where are they at in the standings? Oh, yeah, last place in the division. But actually, I'm looking, they look like they're the 3rd worst team in the AFC or NFC. And 2 or 3 teams. So they'll have a top 5, top 6 draft pick. Yeah. Unless they start popping off wins. Yeah. So at this point, the Giants seem to have wasted a lot of top picks here. Daniel Jones doesn't seem I don't mind drafting Daniel Jones when they the fact that they drafted him way too early though.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to cry over who was in that draft class because it's probably a lot of good people, but also like Saquon Barkley, he's a second overall pick, and I understand he's had a lot of injuries. I mean, you can't predict a torn ACL. This year has kind of seemed like a little bit of a lost year, but like you got to get it right this year. You
Yeah.
got to hit on your first rounder this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're missing, or you kind of like, oh, this guy probably looks more like a second or third rounder, and you're doing that for like several years. That's how the Giants end up with the worst record in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they got to get it right.
Yeah. All right. Let's quickly go back around the NFL. We usually start by what's going on there in Cleveland. Now, you mentioned that Baker, and I'll admire Daniel Jones. He's very, very straightforward with the media, never loses his cool or anything like that. But you said that Baker, there was some cracks there, which, listen, I think Baker worked really hard to change his image. And so I hope he continues that, right? But so what happened? I didn't see or hear about, because that was it was a win, put the W in the board for the Browns, but it was they really didn't play all that well. So what happened with Baker?
Well, he basically refused to talk to the media and said basically like that everyone, I'll see if I can find the exact quote, but essentially everyone is like that's hating on us stinks. Let's see.
High expectations. Does he not understand the expectations for that team? And they should have high expectations. They're deeply talented. They've got to be in the top 5 in the league in talent, no doubt. And they've got a ton of playmakers as well. It sounds like he doesn't understand why the expectations are what they are.
Let's see here. So he skipped the post-game interview. He was asked about it on Monday. I've never dodged any questions or hid away from that. Just frustrated, removed the emotions from all of that. Just decided it was best to wait. Not one part of that's not being accountable. I'd be the first to tell you I played like crap. I don't owe it to you guys. I owe it to my teammates. And like, especially you talking about the local Cleveland media, people love Baker here. Nationally, I feel like a lot of people are still kind of like on him, but
right.
He's loved here. You start saying stuff like that, they're going to kick you right out the door.
Yeah.
It's not like the Browns haven't had, they're not the Steelers having like one quarterback for 10 years. Like,
no,
the revolving door quarterbacks can come back. But really for me, Baker Mayfield is way too hurt to play. There was a few throws on Sunday that you could tell he was trying his best. And I understand, like, I think I mentioned this last week. You don't get credit for playing through an injury if you play poorly. And like, he's playing his heart out. I understand he's got a torn labrum in his shoulder. He had a fracture in his shoulder. He
shouldn't be playing.
An injury, an ankle injury, a foot injury. Like, the guy needs at least a couple weeks just to rest. Even if it's two Sundays, just take it off.
Yeah.
Because like, even if the Browns do make the playoffs, which is kind of looking iffy. But if they do, like, who are you playing in the first round? You think you could take on Lamar Jackson with half of Baker Mayfield?
No.
You think you could take on Josh Allen and the Bills? No. Patrick Mahomes? Like no. You're going to be one and done. You got to, like, the only way the Browns can make a playoff run is if Baker Mayfield's like, I wouldn't even say 100%, but like at least like 85%.
I'll give him credit for trying to grind through, and I give him a lot of credit for, really changing his image. But the thing is, he can't slip back. It sounds like he rebounded a little bit, right? That wasn't as bad a statement as I thought, but he should have met with the media. I mean, again, you want to be one of the top quarterbacks. Tom Brady always met with the media. Aaron Rodgers, say what you want about him. He always, after the game, is there, even if they're a little salty, and Peyton, some of those guys, so we'll see. I think I don't know what to make of the Browns either. I just think that I think that he has to get healthy for them to fully gauge. And I love that you said that they really like him in Cleveland. I think that's great. Again, I nationally I know why they don't like him. I know but as a society, unfortunately, we sometimes think that it's hard for people to change, and we know in the Lord that people can change, and I suspect Baker has found some faith over the years, and he strikes to me that he's making a really hard effort to change. And again, he didn't seem to me to be a very good guy in high school and college. Again, if you go back and watch some of the videos about him or on YouTube and stuff like that, but that's way in the past, I think. And thing is can he be a top flight NFL quarterback? I think that he does have the character to lead. I think he's worked hard at that. Just the fact that he's out there every week with a broken shoulder and everything like that but he could be more hurting his team than helping. So to your point, maybe he should rest a little bit. So real quickly, the games of the weeks was Packers Vikings. Any given Sunday, Vikings. I told you about Kirk Cousins, man. It takes overtime for them to beat the Packers, but I could see the Vikings being that sneaky team, and then the Sunday night game, the Chargers right themselves a little bit, win just a great game over the Steelers, who again, I can't figure them out either. I think the Chargers are really good though, because I think their quarterback is out of that class from a couple of years ago, is probably the better one. I think this is my opinion. I think he's really good. So what did you make of overall NFL Sunday and Monday? And Chiefs Cowboys, while it was a huge matchup, wasn't that great of a game. It wasn't that exciting. Not a lot of scoring that we thought it would be. But nonetheless, I did enjoy watching a decent part of that. What was your overall take from Sunday?
I feel like I have to continue to apologize to Nate on this, because a few weeks ago I said the Colts are done. And
what a game!
And lo and behold, they're like right back in it.
Yeah.
Jonathan Taylor though, 5 touchdowns, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the games that stuck out to me, because I was like, oh gosh, because I had said like, oh yeah, I think they're done.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're done anymore.
No, they've got a good team. Yeah.
I think also a big win for the Cardinals, Colt McCoy, kind of helping lead that team. I'm gonna make a comparison with the Cardinals, and it's a bird actually, with the Eagles from a few years ago. Because it seems like Kyler Murray can never stay healthy, and obviously is a better quarterback than Colt McCoy. But I feel like having a really competent backup helps them to continue to kind of patch through when inevitably their quarterback's going to get hurt. I think having Nick Foles as the backup for Carson Wentz works so well, because Nick Foles is a really good backup. Some of these guys aren't that good at backups.
Yeah.
I'll give another pretty good backup quarterback. Your former boy, Geno Smith.
Yeah.
Although the Seahawks are they're out of it.
Yeah, they've had a tough year. I love that you mentioned Colt McCoy. So he's had such an interesting career, because obviously he was here for a while, back up for the Giants for a while. Everywhere he's gone, I'm sure he's been with a lot of teams, but every time he's called on, he does a good job. He kind of holds the fort, and he's carved out a really nice career for himself, even though expectations for him were obviously really, really high coming out of college, and he didn't meet those probably, but nonetheless, I think he's done a really good job. I agree. Cardinals are also an interesting team. All right, let's jump over to the big story in the NBA, and then we'll hit a little bit of baseball here, and then we'll get to our fun facts. What the heck was that in Detroit the other night? I mean, you break it down. I'm like, LeBron has never been a dirty player, but he's so big and strong, and sometimes you can just get hit in the right or wrong spot in your face where it'll bleed a lot. I couldn't figure that out. And I was telling your mom this last night. If I was a Knicks fan who specifically brought tickets for the Lakers because I want to see LeBron, and listen, the time is ticking down, right? Even though he's playing at a high level, 19 years. I mean, how much longer is he going to play? Maybe a couple more years. But I mean, and then he gets suspended for the game. Break down what you saw on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll start with kind of the breakdown and then kind of an interesting take on how NBA players should handle suspensions, or the NBA should handle suspensions. I'll get to that later though. So for me, it seems like LeBron did it obviously very unintentionally. Like he was just swinging his arm, trying to get free and hit him in the face. Because you could also tell there was a couple times like early on in the incident that he was trying to like go up to him and be like, hey, sorry. There's also been talk that he tried to get Isaiah Stewart's number afterwards to try to talk to him and apologize.
Right.
Like, for all the people that may be saying LeBron's a dirty player, he's not.
No.
Like, yes, he's had like a couple, like this is a bad moment for him, but he's not a dirty player.
No.
It's not like a guy, say, I think in the NFL, like Ndamukong Suh, who's like stomping on people and everything. It's not Draymond Green, who ended up getting suspended during the NBA Finals because of so many flagrant twos.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a dirty player.
No.
But it definitely was a dirty play. I think the refs made the right call on a flagrant two. I mean, incident aside, the guy used his arm to hit someone in the head. It drew blood. By the rule book, that is a flagrant two, and he should have been ejected. In my opinion, he probably shouldn't have gotten suspended because, like, to me, especially early, like, it was kind of early-ish on in the game. Like, you're already missing most of the game. That should count enough. I would say it should be a suspension if it was dirty. If it had some intent by it. Like when a couple weeks ago with Jokic pushing, was it Markieff Morris down?
Yeah. He still hasn't
Isn't
played.
he still hurt?
Yeah. He
So,
still
like,
hasn't played that.
To me, he only got one game for that. He should have gotten more, honestly. So I think that LeBron probably should have gotten suspended. I do think Isaiah Stewart should have gotten suspended because, like, I understand getting hit in the face is going to make you feel some type of way. I understand drawing blood is going to make you feel some type of way. But, like, everyone's trying to calm you down. Everyone thinks that they've calmed you down. You say, oh, I'm cool. And you start running around everyone trying to get to him. Like, and then eventually, I don't know if you saw this part, when they finally got him to, like, head to the locker room so they clean his face off. He's going to try to run around again to try to get LeBron. Like, at one point, you got to say, okay, enough's enough. I understand tempers are high, but you got to just say, okay, like, let's let cooler heads prevail. Like, no one's going to let me fight him.
I just wonder, and maybe it'll come out, if because there was a point there when LeBron probably did say, wait a minute, because he did try to apologize to him when he was on the ground. He stepped away, and then Isaiah goes over to him. They exchange words there, and it seems like something that maybe he said at that moment might have gotten him hot, but you're right. At some point, when do you calm down? I mean, you're going to run through the tunnel and try to come back on the court. All these people try to hold you back. You think you're really going to get to LeBron? I mean, come on. That could have been a lot worse, right? If he had just inches away from breaking away. And the other Lakers seemed like they were really ready to fight, especially and Russell Westbrook. I love him. He's one of my favorite players. But come on.
He's a hothead.
He is, and he's stunned. And they clearly, they put a circle on him. He clearly, as he's running, he's like has his hands up like this, like he's ready to fight. And he's wondering why he got a technical. He's like, what did I do? Come on. And I'm sure he was probably telling the guy, come on. But I think the NBA, what's really good about what the NBA has done over the years is an incident like this and the one with Jokic early in the year, those really stand out. They don't happen every night. The NBA years ago really put in some good things in place to prevent these bench clearing brawls. And this one was close because a lot of players were lingering on the court, kind of coming on. And but there was no real bad blood between these two teams. Pardon the pun on that. But it was just really just the one player who was just very, very upset. But the NBA has done such a good job at curtailing that stuff. When was the last time you really saw a fight with punches and everybody jumping on the court and everything? That used to happen a lot in the NBA, especially in the 80s and 90s. And when you had the roughneck, Knick teams, Miami, Detroit with the bad boys, the Bulls would get into brawls, and the NBA, David Stern really said, you know what? And it was the fight with the Knicks and the Bulls that spilled into the stands. And it was like right in almost David Stern's lap. He was in the second row and, they had this big fight in the playoffs. And that's not, he said, that's not the look that we want. National TV, and Knicks Bulls back then in the 90s, everybody, the world stopped to watch that series. And so, something like that, it really stands out, but it reminded me of Mike Piazza. I don't know if you remember that when Mike Piazza was going after guy, he wound up being his teammate too, Guillermo Moto. He was relief pitcher for the Dodgers, and it was he had hit Piazza in the regular season, and then he hit him again in spring training, and Piazza just went nuts. Which Piazza is such a calm guy. It was so unlike him, but it was the way he did it. He threw the pitch and he ran. So, but it reminded me of that because Piazza wouldn't stop. I mean, and 8 or 9 guys was trying to hold him back, and finally he calmed down. But even when they got him in the dugout, his eyes were still wide. It reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So real quick, Knicks, what'd you think? That was a big win, I thought, last night.
Yeah. Well, back real quick on the suspension too.
Yeah.
I heard a couple of people say that this is a good idea. I want to hear your thoughts because I don't think it's a good idea. So with superstars, especially in the NBA, obviously like a lot of teams, like a lot of fans around the country, especially like LeBron only goes to Madison Square Garden once a year. And like a lot of teams like the East and West thing, you don't really see a lot of the big stars in the West that often. So they said that what the NBA should do is for any type of suspension, they should only be served at home. They shouldn't be served on the road. Like I understand the rationale behind it because like you want to make sure that like as far as money goes, like LeBron's going to bring a sold out crowd. But to me also, Madison Square Garden is going to be sold out anyway. And because LeBron didn't play, I feel like it added a little bit more intrigue to last night's game. What do you think?
I understand the thought process and the idea because of the stars, but I just think that if you truly feel like he deserved a 1-game suspension, it's while it's hurting the fans in New York or whatever city that he's in, and especially like you said in the East where he's only here once a year. You gotta just take it right there. I just think that the NBA has put in so many things to deter these type of things from happening that if they now ease it back and say, okay, you know what, and suppose you're on a 5-game road trip, so now you're not sitting that out for a couple of weeks in some cases, right? Yeah, okay, you can play in Philly, you can play in New York, you can play in Boston, but when you get back, to LA, you're gonna sit out. I just think that I think I understand the thought process and the idea, but if you feel strongly that he had to be suspended, let him sit out right there. See, there's no appeal process. That's the other thing with like in baseball, there's an appeal process, right? So sometimes they don't like it. They might not sit out for a week until after the incident, right? Because they usually knock it down. Okay, they got suspended for 5 games. They appeal. Okay, it's just 2 games or whatever, and now it's 2 weeks later. NBA, it's like, no, you're suspended. It's next game. I would leave it like that.
Yeah. And well, baseball, remember last September, Aroldis Chapman started that whole thing with the Rays got suspended. He didn't serve it till opening day
I
this
know.
year.
Yeah.
So
I see again. The NBA has put in these things to deter all this stuff, like the flagrant fouls and everything like that. Flagrant fouls weren't around when I was a kid, or really even in the '90s. That's a relatively recent, update to deter, some of these incidents from. It's made the sport better, which is.
mhm.
Listen, I'll say this last thing, and then I want to hear your thoughts on last night's game real quick. But it's one of the reasons why I think hockey hasn't taken that next step. Hockey is such a beautiful sport to watch, but I think a lot of fans could care less about the fighting, and I think hockey
Yeah.
still thinks that that's the big draw. Now, hopefully they'll start to because listen, they got an opportunity here. You got two big networks that are showcasing their games. I don't know if you've seen any of TNT's coverage, but it is spectacular. They cover it from end to end on Wednesday nights. They're all in. They have the two games, one early, one late, and they've got the studio show that they're trying to kind of have like the inside the NBA. But hockey's got to now itself take that next step, and they've never put in anything crazy for fighting. They don't get suspended. They get a 5-minute penalty. It's rare unless it's a crazy incident, someone swings a stick or something like that. The NBA
Yeah.
was smart years ago to put that stuff in. All right, talk about what were your thoughts on the game last night?
Well, I didn't watch a ton of it, but I'd seen, oh yeah, they're up by 25. Okay. And then the next thing I know, I get an alert. Oh wow, they're up by 4. I'm like, oh my gosh. And LeBron's not there.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. There's something a little bit off with this team. Like the last couple weeks hasn't felt as smooth, but they've still been winning the games that they need to win. Because like the Lakers, full strength, hard team to beat anyway. Russell Westbrook seems to be clicking. Anthony Davis seems to be pretty good and healthy. LeBron is still LeBron. But without LeBron there, the Knicks, if they want to be like that top 6 team in the East, they got to win games like this. And it seems like they're winning more and more games like this year as opposed to previous years. But there is still something I'm not too sure about. I think I had sent you the article that after the Bulls game, there's apparently a lot of complaining and arguing about like how the offense is being played out. I don't know who that was for. I don't know if that was an Evan Fournier. I don't know if that was a Kemba Walker. I don't know if that was a Julius Randle. But something kind of doesn't seem great. But also, it seems like the Knicks bench seems to be playing better, especially in the fourth quarter. Obi Toppin also had a double-digit game. Emmanuel quickly couldn't miss in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, he
Like,
carried them.
I don't.
Yeah.
When was the last time Kemba Walker played in the fourth quarter? Evan Fournier played for some of it, but Alec Burks also, like, he's kind of come out of nowhere.
I, yeah. You got to play these guys in the fourth quarter. You spent the money to get Fournier and Walker. They both were playing in the fourth quarter last night. Walker not for that long, and with Walker, I got the sense that he was playing the fourth quarter because Derrick Rose was hurt. And I agree. There's something off. They're treading water. But I thought when you started talking, I could have easily taken what you had said and applied that to the Lakers as well, because after their loss, they're 9-10 after 19
yeah.
games, and so there's something a little bit off with them as well. But I think the Knicks are going to be okay. I don't know what the offensive struggle. I couldn't put my finger on it. First, I was saying Julius Randle because they've been double teaming him and everything, but there's something more, and I think the rotation. I think Thibodeau is struggling with that a little bit, because and he stays with a hot hand whether you're a starter or not. But you pay those guys. You're not paying Kemba Walker to sit on the bench through the fourth quarter. Even if you put him in there with Derrick Rose, Quickly. He was great last night, but Quickly's still a very inconsistent, player. He'll have a night like that, and then he'll have a night like he's just throwing up threes and they're not even coming close. But he's a dynamic player. He really is. I can't put my finger on. They're treading water right now, but I think that again as the season unfolds, they'll be okay. As will the Lakers. I mean, you know there's no way the Lakers aren't going to be okay. But even I know LeBron's missed some games, but they shouldn't be 9-10. Not with that team. So we'll see what happens. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, one other quick thing.
Yeah.
And they mentioned this. I was like, oh my gosh, the next 5 games are scary. Phoenix, at Atlanta, at Brooklyn, Chicago, and Denver. So,
here's your test. Yeah, here's your early season test. It's still early, but here's your test. Here's your test. That's not going to be easy, All right, real quick, because I want to hear your fun facts. I'm going to start off with one in a second, but the only thing I wanted to ask you on baseball, any surprises with the awards? Bryce Harper, Ohtani, Robbie Ray, right? Robbie Ray, right?
Yeah.
Any surprises at all with Cy Young, MVP?
No, not really. I'll point this out. I called Bryce Harper back in like June or July. I said he'd be a guy to look out for.
He did. Yeah.
I'm still a little surprised that he won because I think Juan Soto had a bit of a better year.
Yeah.
But also, I'm happy for Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper is actually kind of a subject of a few fun facts here that I have. Okay. But I wasn't surprised at Ohtani. Ohtani is now unanimous MVP too. Not really that surprising. Aaron Judge ended up 4th, which I think he deserved that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean everything else I think was pretty standard. I'm a little disappointed Garrett Cole didn't win, but I kind of figured because of how September went for both guys. But yeah, nothing really for me.
Okay. I agree. I mean, my only one was the pitching for Ohtani definitely pushed him over the edge because I thought offensively Guerrero had a better year, and they were in contention. I remember the last day it turned around. They were in great shape on the last day until the Red Sox rallied. It looked like the Blue Jays are going to get in, and then the Red Sox rallied, and Guerrero was such a big part of that with the team. I thought that, but you just can't take away what Ohtani did. It's historic, So we'll see if the Angels get better with all the guys, the Met players they're picking off. I don't know who's next. Michael Conforto is probably going to sign next with the Angels. All right, can I give you my fun fact real quick, and then you can close us out with yours. I've talked about this before, but I did a little bit since we're on MVP and stuff like that. And I talked about how I felt Tom Seaver got robbed Ferguson Jenkins in 71. 1961 and 1962, National League MVP. I think the writers just got it backwards both years. And it was just stunning when I looked up the stats. I talked about this when Frank Robinson passed away. Frank Robinson won it in 1961, right? I want to make sure I read all these to you because I know you love these stats like this. He had a great year, right? He had 37 homers. By the way, the Reds went to the World Series that year, lost to the Yankees. He had 37 homers, 124 RBIs. He batted .323. That's a spectacular year. He had 32 doubles, and he had a .404 on-base percentage. So he had a great year. Great year. Orlando Cepeda in 1961 had 46 homers, 142 RBIs, and he batted .311. Another spectacular year, and I think his on-base percentage was like .380 or something like that. So Robinson won the MVP. Clearly, some of the offensive stats, especially home runs and RBIs, which is what they really looked at back then, right? Cepeda was by far superior, but the Giants finished like 3rd or 4th that year. Reds went to the World Series. 1962, Cepeda wins the MVP. I'll read his numbers first. A really good year, right? 35 homers, 114 RBIs. He batted .306. So down from the year before when he didn't win it. When he wins it in 62, Giants went to the World Series that year, lost to your Yankees. Frank Robinson, 1962, he had 39 homers, 136 RBIs. He batted .342. He had 51 doubles, and he had a 421 on-base percentage. And he finished second in the MVP voting. So you can make such an argument. I had to look at that twice. I'm like, did Cepeda not win in 61? Did they have it backwards? Robinson won in 61. Cepeda won in 62. It was backwards. Robinson clearly had the better year in 62. Cepeda clearly had the better year in 61. But the National League traditionally, reading a little bit more, traditionally voted for, unless you just had this great year, which both of them did, traditionally it was the team who led the person who led their team to the World Series. So clearly, you know, the Reds went to the World Series in 61 and the Giants went to the World Series in 62. And they followed that pattern. And I'm surprised that, you know, Robinson should have won 3 MVPs. He should have won kind of back-to-back, although you can make such a case he shouldn't have won in 61. You know, it should have been Cepeda in 61 and Robinson in 62. I just thought it's really, really interesting, you know, how that unfolds. I mean, these were great years. And this is in the not dead ball era, but, you know, people weren't hitting. I mean, you hit 46 home runs in that era. That was amazing, you know. But Robinson was just a great player. Cepeda, Hall of Famer, but he didn't have as many great years as Frank Robinson. Frank Robinson is clearly one of the top 5, top 10 players of all time, no doubt.
Yeah.
All right, hit us up. I know you got some fun ones.
All right. Well, I'll start with a question for you.
Yeah.
And there's a reason why I'm starting it out this way. There are only 2 players in league history to win league MVP, World Series MVP, and an All-Star MVP. Do you know who the 2 are?
I want to say one. Is Willie Stargell one?
No.
No. All right, then I'm gonna cry uncle then.
Well, can I give you a hint?
Yeah.
It's actually interesting because they were teammates.
They were teammates?
Yeah.
Willie Mays and Willie McCovey?
No.
I was gonna say Hank Aaron and somebody and Dusty Baker, but Dusty Baker never won the league MVP. No, man, hit me up.
Well, you just talked about one of them, Frank Robinson and Brooks Robinson. 61 MVP for Frank Robinson, 66 he won as well, and then won the World Series MVP in 66 and the All-Star MVP in 71. Brooks Robinson, the 64 AL MVP, 1970 World Series MVP, and then the 66 All-Star game.
Oh, that is great. Love that.
A few interesting things with Bryce Harper. So he became the 5th player in league history to win MVP with 2 different teams. The last to do so is A-Rod with both the Rangers and the Yankees, Frank Robinson, Jimmy Fox, and Barry Bonds.
Wow.
Also, he is now the 4th active player to win multiple MVPs. The other 3 are Trout, Pujols, and Miguel Cabrera, which, like, all 3 of those are like surefire Hall of Famers.
No doubt.
Should we start thinking Bryce Harper's in that ilk? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I'm right now. I'm saying yes, but yeah.
So I think I think he's starting to really put himself up there. He is also, I don't know if you remember this, but he did not make the All-Star team. This has happened 15 times in league history. The most recent, 2007, Jimmy Rollins, also a Philly, the last Philly to win it.
Wow.
So those are my Bryce Harper winning the MVP and its interesting facts.
That's awesome.
I have another one with the Cy Young. So the 2014 Tigers had this as their rotation. The 2021 Cy Young Award winner, Robbie Ray, Max Scherzer, who's won it multiple times, Justin Verlander, who's won it multiple times, David Price, who also won it, and Rick Porcello, who also won it.
Oh my gosh. That is amazing.
2014.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's crazier, though, is 2014, not that long ago, they got swept in the division series by the Orioles, where the pitchers that they faced in that series, Chris Tillman, Wei-Yin Chen, and Bud Norris. None of those guys have played in baseball since 2019.
Really? Wow.
So,
wow. The Chen, he was a really good pitcher. Didn't we see him pitch when we went to see the Orioles? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Lefty, right? Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So
wow.
I think that's kind of interesting.
Wow. Wow.
2 more facts. These are one's a football one and one's a basketball one. So the Detroit Lions, obviously losing to the Browns, they're now 0-9-1. So when they fired Jim Caldwell, he was 9-7 2 years in a row. He left the team with the best record of any Lions coach since the 70s. So spanning almost 50 years.
I feel so bad for the Lions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Last thing, just as a testament to how great the Warriors have been this year, they are right now still the only team to score 100 points in every single game this year.
Man, listen, that's amazing coaching, and they've just got an amazing team. They really do. Hey, can I also, 2 guys that stood out back on your other question that I used to use as trivia question. Chipper Jones, when he won in 1999, he didn't make the All-Star team. And Kirk Gibson, when he won in 88, didn't make the All-Star team. So there's been a couple, I didn't realize it was that many that won the MVP and didn't make the All-Star team. Harper wasn't. Remember, we were down on him, but you said that he was going to turn it on, and you was right around that time, around July, and he almost carried the Phillies. The Phillies, they still got to be kicking themselves that they blew those games to the Braves that last week of the season. They could have been right there. Yeah. All right, this has been great. This has been fun. Those were phenomenal facts, man. I love them. So take us home, man.
All right, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you guys next week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Absolutely. Good stuff. Thanks, Ken.